Hi guys, let's talk about peer review and what you need to do to help this process run more smoothly. So first off, this is your chance kind of to be an instructor and a help for a classmate. Something that they tell us about feedback as instructors is to try to balance high love and high expectations. So with that, it's that you really want the person you're helping to succeed, but you need to make sure that they're holding them up to high expectations and you're not letting them off too easily. I'm sure many of you have had peer review assignments in college and high school, and let's talk about some ways that those might not go so well. So first thing first is if you say to a peer, hey, good job on this paper, and you know that they didn't. One time that I had experience with this was in graduate school. I was taking a class where we needed to write 20 to 30 page papers, and one of the ones that I was assigned to review had done something that the professor very specifically asked us not to do. It showed she didn't really understand a concept, and I was really worried. And it was hard because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. We were friends, but I also knew that if she turned in this paper for the final, she was going to fail the class. So I tried to stress what positive things I could, but I made sure that she knew what had to change. She actually did end up not getting any credit for her rough draft. And so I'm glad, though, that she knew from the peer review that there was a problem and she didn't think, oh, well, my friends told me I did a good job and then the professor's crazy. Make sure that they know if there is actually a problem. Another thing that I'm sure we've all seen or done in the past is just giving sort of broad statements like, oh, your conclusion could be better, but I liked the paper. Let them know why it could be better. Like maybe their conclusion could be better because they don't give any policy suggestions, or the policy suggestions that they give are very unrealistic, or you think that they really need to mention a major current event, or maybe it's just not organized and confusing. Tell them those things because those things are a lot easier to change than just a blanket, well, that could be better. And then another thing that isn't helpful is a personal attack. So the paper you read might be something you disagree with really badly. Please don't grade them harshly on that. My personal stance on the grading is that I don't grade about what your thought or your belief is. I'm looking at how well you support your argument and how well you can think sociologically. That is what I care about for the purposes of this class. So let's talk about ways you can help another student. You all come into this with your own unique strengths, and you'll really want to apply that as you're helping another student. So maybe you know that you've always been able to put together a really well-organized paper. Help them come up with, places where their paper naturally flows. Help them come up with linking sentences. Help them figure out which parts of the paper belong in which places. Maybe you're really good at a thesis statement, at helping them to be, clear, helping them to be debatable. Maybe you need to help the person with their thesis statement. Maybe there's two things you can help with the sources. If you notice they're not in ASA format, maybe give them a link to where they can find ASA format. Or maybe if, as you've done your own paper, you've noticed a really great source that you think would help them, hand that. Or you might want to point out, hey, I feel like your sources aren't really great for a research paper. Maybe you should look at some databases or some books. All ways you could help. Maybe you could help them make connections to the textbook. So if you're reading their paper, it reminds you of a chapter. Tell them about that. Give them a suggestion for where they can look. Maybe you love the news and you love current events, and so maybe you are going to be great at giving them policy suggestions or telling them what's going on in the world. That could be a great strength. A strength I'm going to add with a slight caution is I bet a lot of you are excellent writers. I've definitely seen great writing from many of you. It can sometimes be tempting when you read a rough draft to only mark somebody's grammar and punctuation. Now that is helpful. I will grade down if I can't understand somebody's grammar or punctuation, if it makes it difficult to follow. But please make sure you don't only do a grammar and punctuation read. Please make sure you're also giving content-related critiques. Right, I just want to make one more plea for the power of specifics in your feedback on anything you do. So here's an experience from a paper I turned in college. I took one philosophy class, and I really did not know what I was doing, especially at the start of the semester. I turned in a rough draft, and the only thing that the professor wrote on it was "this is D minus work," and I had no idea why. I really didn't know what was going on with my paper. I did set up a conference with him and I figured out what the problem was, but I never would have known if I hadn't done that. Don't be that person. Um, Instead, if you say your paper needs direct connections to sociology, for example, you might want to talk about cultural assimilation, which for the record is kind of what my problem was with my philosophy paper. It needed more like direct connections to specific philosophies. Or say, your examples don't connect to your thesis statement. You didn't support that argument. That is so much more helpful to someone than just a blanket statement. And then lastly, you really want to use the rubric for this. Now, conveniently, this is the same rubric I'm going to use on your final papers. So if as you're working on your own paper, you want to use that also as you are finishing that final paper, I'd strongly recommend that. So here's what we are going to want to do. So you'll select the area it belongs in, but what also could be really helpful is highlighting why. So let me bring that up really quick and drag it over here. So you'll just need to select it. So maybe you are reading their thesis and you think it really belongs in the B level. And so why you thought that was you thought it was too simple. It could be really helpful to just sort of take this and put that in red so they know exactly why. Now, also, conversely, don't be afraid to give feedback about what you think is specifically good. So, if you thought that in their application and development that their direct examples from research are amazing, by all means, highlight that. That will be great for them to know. Also, don't be afraid to highlight things across multiple comments or content areas. So for example, if with their documentation they do have 10 outside sources, and that's great, but they're improperly cited, that's helpful for them to know too. Take a look also at all of the areas. Now, because you only have to do 3 to 4 pages, some of these may not apply. You can just write NA there and that's totally fine, but just know that eventually you do need it for the entire paper. And yeah, just as always, make sure you look at all sections of the assignment. You do need to fill in the rubric. Give these overall comments about strengths and improvement areas for the paper. And then down here at the end, you have room for any sort of additional comment on each of these areas. So if there's something in depth that you'd like to talk about, maybe say on their sociological comprehension, like you included the theories, but I really don't think that's what secondary structural assimilation means, that's where you can go ahead and put that down there. All right, thanks, and please let me know if you have any questions.